Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with individuals from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green, and sustainable future for us, the planet, and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem, passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. Just before we get into today's episode, I wanted to thank everyone for being here, lending us your ears, and wanting to learn about how we can better our health, the planet, and all the beautiful animals. It takes courage to know that the world isn't all sunshine and rainbows, but bravery to look into the solutions. Thank you for joining me on that journey. If you haven't already, come hang out on Instagram at plant.paradigm or Twitter at plantparadigm. Moving on, today we are joined by Pramisha Thapaliya, a climate activist and environmentalist from Nepal. Pramisha has a degree in agriculture and climate science and focuses on implementing change through educating the youth and organising projects. She hosts a new podcast in Nepali, providing information on climate change as well. In today's conversation, we'll be touching on sustainability a lot, looking both at local and global problems and solutions. I hope you enjoy this chat and I will see you on the other side. Hi, Pramisha, welcome to the podcast. How are you going today?
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for having me in this podcast. Everything is going well and I'm pretty well apart from this pandemic stuff happening all over the world. And how are you?
I'm doing very good. I actually just spoke with your friend and colleague, Lana Wittagand. So I know you
Yeah.
two are doing amazing work together and you've really done some amazing advocacy for climate change and environmentalism, which is amazing.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome. And to kick things off, because you are doing so much, what projects are you currently working on?
Currently, as you most know, that I'm a youth ambassador of Real Food Systems. Real Food Systems is an advocacy platform where also young people coming together and work on the solutions to have a sustainable food system awareness and advocacy going on. Also, our youth ambassadors are also taking real action on the ground level in countries. So I'm really glad to be part of the Real Food Systems as a youth ambassador. And apart from that, here at Nepal, I'm working as an agriculture instructor at public school that is teaching students about agriculture in high school. And this also includes both theoretical and practical parts like doing gardening and doing mushroom cultivation and likewise. And also, I work in Yongo Agriculture Working Group. Most of you might not know what Yongo is. Yongo is official children and youth constituency of UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And in Yongo Agriculture Working Group, I work as co-lead along with my another colleague. And there we advocate on various climate and agriculture related stops, like we advocate in climate agriculture nexus, and we also lobby with the policy makers. We also give intervention and speech in the conference, and also we carry out action in those conferences. Likewise, we are also doing policy submissions to UNFCCC and other bodies. That which is comes under thematic topic of climate agriculture nexus. Likewise, I also work as SDG2 interim focal point of UNMGCY, which is a General Assembly mandated children and youth constituency. And there I work on breezing the mechanism of UN entities and ground level youths who are working in SDG2 stuff. That's all what I'm doing currently.
Okay, that's the one word I would just use to describe that. Wow, because that's a lot of work that you're putting in, not just for yourself, but also in a certain way, quite altruistically, which is really beautiful. And you mentioned at the beginning that you teach children at schools about like agriculture and all the little umbrellas that I guess sit within that. So being a teacher, what's like the most effective way currently to kind of teach youth and children about these issues and potentially how to do like gardening? How do you relate to them?
Talking about also climate change part a bit and also agriculture part, I believe that the first thing that we should know is what the problem is, right? If we don't know what the climate change is and how the current agriculture system is being unsustainable, we can't teach how can we make it sustainable and how can we change it. So I think the first way that we can teach young people and children that by teaching them what the problem is, by showing what the problem really is and how it is affecting them personally. Unless we can't show that it is their personal effect is happening and personal impact is happening, we can't push them to do the right solution and to go forward, right? And while teaching agriculture in a school, the most effective part is apart from theoretical course and theoretical lectures happening, the young people and children really want to come outside of the classrooms and they really want to do gardening stops and doing cultivation on their own and leading projects. Although in Nepal, I teach in a bit rural stuff where the children are already doing agriculture stuff in their home. So apart from their previous knowledge of the agriculture, we are trying to incorporate them the new technologies that are coming in the world and how can we make the agriculture sustainable by blending the technology with the indigenous and traditional knowledge. And so, in terms of agriculture teaching, bringing children and young people, young students in the field is one of the most effective part. And in terms of climate change advocacy and education, it can be done by. I can't recommend the all the one effective role because it in space in different parts there could be their own specific ways and specific techniques and workshops and simulation games and other stuffs could be more useful in educating the young people and children since they grasp more easily and they can apply to their family and community.
So you mentioned in there that you're teaching them how it affects them personally. Do you think being in Nepal, climate change might affect them differently to someone who's living in like myself, Australia or US or continental Europe? Do you think that how do you connect what their personal experiences might be with climate change within their own communities?
Yeah, as most of us might not know that although Nepal has little contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, it is like 0.025%, which is insignificant, right? And
Mm.
but Nepal is one of the most vulnerable countries to the impacts of climate change. That it listed on fourth most vulnerable countries to the impacts of climate change. And most of the people are around 65% of the people here are engaged in agriculture. So climate change impacts directly affects the agriculture stuff that they are doing in their family and communities. Most of the people here do subsistence agriculture. That means they grow crops and they raise animals to feed their families and they only sell the surplus stuffs to the market. And so due to climate change, uncertain the various impacts on agriculture are increasing like uncertain rainfall, similarly flood, also drought. Due to these stops, the crops are being destroyed and similarly new pests and new diseases are being increasing. So it is directly affecting the community of the Nepal and also to the families of my students because most of the families of my students are engaged in agriculture. So they are experiencing the first-hand impacts and the impacts on the agriculture also means the impacts on their livelihood and impacts on their income generations. And so it also relates to the affordability of their education.
Yeah, that's insane. So when you say like a majority of Nepalese people, especially in these communities, are engaged in agriculture, when you're saying climate change directly affects them, is that like from the flooding and things, it destroys the crops? Is that how that works?
There are various instances like due to flash flood, Nepal is divided into basically three geographical terrains like mountainous regions, hilly region, and Torah region, plain region. And most of the plants are produced, crops, various staple crops like rice are produced on the Torah region. And when in the monsoon like in July, June, when the heavy rain hits, then there would be a massive flood, especially flash flood, and which directly sways off all the crops and that destroys all of the crops. That is one of the instance. And other could be like various new diseases and pests come, and farmers don't know how to control those pests, insects, and how to control those diseases, and that is also destroying their crops. That is another way. Similarly, when the farmers actually needs the rain in their field, and if the rain doesn't come at that season, then the farmer's crop would be destroyed. And similarly, if there would be excessive rainfall, that also destroys the crops. And there are various other instances.
Yeah, and then when you mentioned firstly, that's quite sad. How because of I guess other people's efforts in the case of climate change, it's affecting
Mhm.
Nepal, a country that has quite a very insignificant number affecting to
Yeah.
climate change. When you did mention that 0.25 or whatever that figure was, is that because there's quite a lot offsetting the carbon, like quite a lot of carbon sequestration through the trees and all that? Or is that because Nepal, the economic system and the agriculture doesn't emit as much because there's less factory farms and industrialization?
Basically, it is due to because we are not developed economically, and there are not much factories and industries, since a lot of things are still not depend upon don't depend upon the fossil fuels, and most of the electricity that is generated is also from hydroelectricity. And I think that is the case because we are not being developed like as other industrialized countries, like which emits more carbon. And also another part that you talked about is it could be due to carbon sequestration due to heavy forest, a lot of forest present in Nepal. It is both in terms of less industrialization and also carbon offsetting. It could be from both sides. But the unfortunate part is that our government is emitting the development model of the industrialized countries, and they are trying to destroy the forest without proper environmental mitigation planning ahead. And that is one of the sad part here, because government is only focusing on the economic development without thinking about the environmental aspect of it.
Yeah, well, I was going to go on to the next question with what's Nepal doing right that we're not doing right, but I guess they're catching up to what we've done wrong, which is destroy our forests and sell it off to developers. And that's quite a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
What's something like obviously you're quite big in the environmental climate change space. What's something you've learned about this area that surprised you?
Yeah, previously I thought that when young people goes in advocacy platforms and young people lobby, young people do action. Previously, when before entering into this area, I thought that our leaders would actually listen us. But when I actually go into the system and saw the various things happening, I found out that the leaders, political leaders, pretend to listen us. They tap pat on our head and say that, hey, you are doing very well, very good, but they actually don't listen us. That is very unfortunate. If our political leaders have listened us way ahead very properly, then we would have seen significant changes up to now. But they go through their own way, as they are doing since past, since history. So, and they don't actually listen us. That is very unfortunate, and which I hadn't expected in the beginning. But yeah, this is.
Yeah, that's quite sad, especially when you've got I guess so many people lobbying for like this change. And I know I've seen you be part of like these rallies or protests to help inspire a bit of change. And it's unfortunate that I mean it's not listened to. Why do you think they're not listening to a lot of the rallies and protests that are happening?
The one of the reason is that the system, the total political system and the bureaucratical system, everything is interwilled in a kind of rat race that they don't actually have time also, and also they don't think it is significant, because they, although they see the various significant changes happening, like we can see the Fridays for Future movement multiplying, but they actually go through their own pace. And since most of the economy is still developing, still depending upon the fossil fuels economy and everything, that they don't want to step out of their comfort zone and actually act. That might be one of the reasons.
That sounds like a pretty good reason. And it sounds like a very universal reason, regardless of where you
Yeah.
are. That's definitely happening in the political game. I read a post recently where you mentioned that the current food system is not sustainable and is unreliable. Can you talk about what you mean?
Yeah, also COVID also had shown that our current food systems interlinks everything, right, before farm to fork. That is also beyond the fork. That relates to food waste and other stops also. And the current food system is whole unsustainable, because we can see that also due to various reports, we most of the majority of the world's population depend on animal-based products, and animal agriculture, particularly industrial animal agriculture, contributes to more than around 29% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. That is after the fossil fuels contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions, and that is very unfortunate. Also, 70% of the total land of the earth is used to grow the feed of fodder or feed for those animals which ultimately human would eat. And that is also very unfortunate. That is leading to deforestation and more greenhouse gas emissions. So our current diet system is wholly unsustainable. So we need significant upheaval changes in the system, and we need to transition animal-based diet to plant-based diet significantly to change the system. And also the yeah I talked about this, the animal system and all greenhouse gas emissions, our diet, and current greenhouse gas emissions from the animal based products is very unsustainable. And also another part that I want to talk about is that corporate owned food systems, right? Currently our food systems and agriculture systems, when we see on a global level, is being currently owned by the corporate systems, and the farmers are always in a debt, and the farmers are not gaining the significant amount of advantage. So we need to transition the corporate owned food system to farmers owned food systems. And also our due to the globalized food trade and globalized food chain, in this type of pandemic, we also saw that due to COVID-19, there in some places there is food wastage, lots of food wastage is happening, and in some places there is food shortage. So we need to make our food chain and food system localized as much as possible. So I think the three most important aspects that I would like to consider is transition of animal-based diets to plant-based diets, and similarly a corporate-based food system to farmers-based food systems, and also localizing the food systems.
Yeah, and it's so strange when you not strange, sorry. It's so true when you look at the sustainability of it is quite alarming. And when you like when I
Yeah,
first heard about it, it's almost surprising how bad it is. Like you want it to be it's
yeah,
kind of bad, but when it's like so bad, you're like, surely not. Like
yeah,
as if like something like that happens. Like I know in terms of like a poultry, a chicken or producing chicken is actually the most sustainable one when you're looking at industrialization. But for every 9 calories you give the chicken, you're only getting 1 calorie back.
yeah,
So that is like getting 9 plates of food given to you and you just eat one, you
yeah,
throw out the other plates of food. Like,
yeah,
and we have starvation on this planet. Like that is insanity. And the chicken's the most sustainable one. And it gets worse as you go up the chain to like your
yeah,
cattle.
yeah, yeah,
When it comes to like agriculture and that whole side of the things, I believe it's more centered around societal beliefs of what we think is possible and what we think is reasonable to change in a lot of ways. What steps do you think we have to take realistically that is possible to change that belief system to something that we can change? Like, what are the small steps we can take?
Yeah, as you said that the biggest step cannot be taken on one leap, right? Small steps make an ocean. Small drops make an ocean. So I think as an individual and as a society, the first step that we could take is awareness and advocacy. As I also said in my previous talk in this podcast, the first important step is to recognize a problem. And most of the people in our community and our society who doesn't know about the food system and agriculture, they don't know what the problem is, right? They don't know how the animal based diets is impacting the planet and how the animal based diets is not sustainable at all. So the first step that we could do is doing awareness and advocacy from our side. First of all, we can convince our family, and then we can convince our community, and this goes in multiplying. So the one of the biggest step, one of the smallest step but effective step is to become aware oneself and make informed decision, and then awareing our family and community by ourselves. And this, and also if we have various platforms and if we have organizations that we could advocate, and then we should advocate wherever we are. I think so awareness and advocacy could be a smallest step, but is one of the most effective aspects.
Yeah, that's for sure. And in particular with Nepal, you mentioned that quite a bit of your economy, or at least in the communities, is all agriculture based. Do you think
Mm.
farmers in general would be quite easy to they can take easy steps to transition to a more sustainable, because a lot of them, we know, like Nepal doesn't have too much industrialization, especially when you're looking
Yeah.
at other countries in the world. When you're talking to farmers, do you think that they are quite sustainable in Nepal and in their practices?
Yeah, compared to other industrialized countries and other farming practices in other ends of the world, the Nepal is quite sustainable because we are also still practicing the localized farming system, and the farmers grow and produce and sell in the local market, and the local families buy those produce, and it is sustainable from their side too. And also most of the farmers practice the organic kind of farming practices, although but currently the organic farming practices is being converted into inorganic farming practices, since various multinational companies come here and advocate on their chemical fertilizers, chemical
Yeah.
pesticides, and also due to the impacts of climate change, various pests and diseases are coming, so that it is a compulsion for farmers to use those pests and diseases, use those chemicals for to control the pests and diseases. And also the most important thing for farmers is money, right? Because if they don't get money, their
Mm.
family cannot survive, and they can't afford the basic rights like food and other stuff. And for those purpose to find, and the consumers tend to buy only attractive fruits, attractive vegetables, and those which are devoid of pests and devoid of diseases. And so they need to use those chemicals to make those better looking agricultural commodities. So currently our although compared to other countries, our farming system is sustainable, but it is being unsustainable due to these stops.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of the time, you know, it's hard to adopt 100% sustainable practice. But
Yeah.
when you mentioned organic for a second, how does organic and non-organic farming affect sustainability?
Yeah, yeah, if we talk in terms of production, organic farming can't wholly confirm the increase in production. But when we see on the short-term basis, but in the long-term basis, the since we know that chemical fertilizer and chemical pesticides are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, and also lots of continuous use of chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides also destroys the land, destroys the soil, which couldn't be farmed ultimately. But in the context of organic farming, the soil health is continuously being restored. And in context of organic farming, we can use the local and organic based techniques to control the pest and disease, although it couldn't control 100%, and it couldn't 100% increase the production. It might decrease the production, but when we see on a long-term basis, it is important for ecology, important for environment, and important of continuing farming for generations.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of regenerative agriculture. Have you heard much about this?
Yeah, I have heard about regenerative agriculture, but I'm not wholly into this term. But I know some basic stuff of it.
Yeah, I a lot of people have been talking about it recently because they're buying like these really,
Yeah,
it's basically talking against monocropping. So when you just
yeah,
grow corn or when you just grow wheat, which is like what like a lot of is grown for the animals. So they're destroying these huge fields where because they're turning of the soil too much, it's releasing too much
yeah,
carbon into the air and it's not sequestering enough because every plant needs to work together and they're using all these pesticides that are getting rid of these that you're not meant to be using the pesticides because that gets rid of the
yeah,
bugs that in turn help the soil health. So that's really interesting. I mean, when you're talking about the communities and the farming aspect of Nepal, I think a lot more should be adopted from practices like that, especially when you look at community farming. I'd be curious to see if that's possible on a global scale, especially in like cities like I live in Melbourne. So is that possible in Melbourne where we've got quite a metropolitan like big city life, there's not a lot of farms? Do you think there's a way to bring in that community feel into big cities like this?
yeah. It's interesting to see that in Nepal there is not much monocropping, and people are always practicing mixed cropping. And as you said, most of the practices of regenerative agriculture and permaculture is actually being practiced in Nepal. Even the farmers don't know the terms. And when we talk about the big cities, although it becomes difficult in the first run, but if all the farmers and all the people of the urban cities are convinced, it might take a big leap. And in terms of urban farming, urban cities, we can also focus on the aspects of urban agriculture like rooftop gardening. And if all the people can grow their stuff, like grow their veggies and not I can't talk about fruits, but if all the people in the urban areas can grow their veggies themselves, then it could be a bit sustainable. And also if the farmers could come together and make a cooperative or something like that to do a mixed farming, it might be possible.
Yeah, I've seen a few like movies. Man, I can't even forget the movie where they all have these, every apartment block has like a rooftop garden.
uh,
And I know a few areas in Melbourne have started like this community. So per area or municipality, they all buy a block of land that's
um,
like near the city and that is
yeah,
devoted to that area and it's a community garden. And that's starting here. And that's like a really
yeah.
unique way to get the big cities to have a bit more gardens around. Um, as being like a youth and being part of the youth ambassadors for RFS, do you think, and especially speaking in Nepal as a youth, do you think voices are being heard louder or they're being drowned out?
Yeah, in terms of the advocacy in political system, I am not typically advocating in the agriculture stops in the political stream here, as my work typically lies in the awareing community level and awareing the students through school outreach. And yeah, since young students and young people could grasp the context so easily, and they tend to be quite open to the opportunities. They actually go to their home and they actually talk to their parents and they say, hey, this is this. And that is helping to change the mindset of communities and mindset of those families. And in terms of in terms of the advocacy in these kinds of platforms like the panel discussion, and it might be podcast, although we sometimes get into the discussion with the people from the agriculture ministries, they tend to hear some issues, but as I said already, they actually do their stuff what it is going on.
Yeah, for sure. And like being like part of like a community and you're a teacher, obviously, do you think like education providers, even when studying with like university or colleges or in school, with younger
Mhm.
kids, do you think like they're pretty up to date with climate change and environmental knowledge and solutions and what's going on?
Yeah, I believe that climate change education is most important part when we talk about climate change awareness, right? And climate change education should be incorporated in the formal school curriculum, but unfortunately, in Nepal there is not formal climate change curriculum in school level. We can see the significant changes in countries like Dominican Republic, where they have their mainstream climate change curriculum in schools, but in Nepal, we unfortunately don't have, but some people are working to bring that curriculum in high school level and in college level. In school level, they have certain topics in the science and environment studies, but they don't have fully climate change curriculum, and they have basic knowledge on what climate change is and what global warming is and how greenhouse gases are emitting in the school level. And in college level, if the education is related to the term like agriculture, if they're reading agriculture, environmental sciences, economics, they could know, but not outside, not to the field of medical and other stuffs. Only if their education is
That's
done.
what we need
Yeah.
you for, Pramisha, to teach kids about climate, even though it's not the curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, do you like and being as part of like communities, a lot of your kids are in different communities as well, rural and urban and all these different levels. Do you think like is the plant-based like diet and eating a predominantly plant diet, do people know what that is in the culture and do people know why you should do something like that?
Yeah, in Nepal, it feels good to say that our diet is mainly like vegetarian or vegan, because most of the things we eat is that we eat on a daily basis is rice, veggies, curry, and then dal like pulse and other stuffs. And our diet is mainly vegetarian. And the people here eat meat not regularly, but since like once a week or twice a week or something like that, because still meat is considered as luxury diet here. But since most of the people's income is increasing, they're more being dependent on the animal based diet. So it is like uh, I, I think when talking about talking with people to adopt plant based diet, it is not quite effective here, because people are already being following the plant based diets as a whole. But we can talk to them like what are how animal based diets is affecting the world and all. And also the animal like the chicken and the lamb they eat here today, and they eat in the Nepal today is mainly local, and that is not from the factory farms and like that. And also talking about the beef that people that contributes to more of methane emissions, the beef eating is here not legally allowed. So it is not contributing, at least from Nepal. And yeah,
That's
that's all.
awesome. I mean, like it's almost like an alien world. Like
Yeah,
like and not being like culturally mean or stupid or anything like that, but it's just so fascinating to be in a culture where like a majority of people would eat plants anyway. And I guess it's almost harder to have a conversation on why you should eat mostly plants. It's like
yeah,
it's if everyone was eating like Nepalese people eat, the climate would just go just down like really fast. And that's a really awesome thing to see.
yeah.
So most people don't really know, do they know what the word vegan means, or is it just like vegetarian? That's like the word they use.
Yeah. The most of the people of our age or young people, they know about veganism. Like although layman people couldn't know what the veganism term is, because a lot of people are although are adopting the vegan lifestyle here. We can also see different vegan pages of Nepal in Instagram. Like many people are being vegan. So yeah, they know the term.
They know the term. Beautiful. That's what we want to see. Um, and let's talk about, I want to talk about gender for a second. It's a weird spin I'd like to take on it, but I know around the world it's a very important topic to discuss, because I know that unfortunately in different ways and forms, we do still face a bit of gender inequality.
Yeah.
Do you feel like politically in what you do you feel like you've sometimes been a little bit I guess, disadvantaged because you're a female, specifically in, I guess, your field of work or talking about climate change? Do you feel a bit disadvantaged not being a male?
Yeah, there are lots of discrimination happening in the world, ranging from racism to gender discrimination, sexism, and everything. And yeah, I believe that I think yeah, I have uh, felt quite a discriminatory approach as a female and as also as a young people, a young person, and especially from the global south when working in these stuff. Although in context of Nepal is a patriarchal country that many women are being like disadvantaged already. Women are being, because it is a patriarchal country, and we experience various forms of young women and women here, especially experience various forms of discrimination that could be subtle or deep. Daily, in a daily basis, in a work and in everyday life, in public street or everywhere, but the most important aspect is we continue on advocating on our rights and we continue on fighting the patriarchy and moving ahead.
What advice would you have for a young woman specifically that is potentially at a disadvantage to help tackle that discrimination?
The most important advice that I want to give to the young women to tackle the discrimination is, first of all, be confident on your own approach and be educated, be informed, and try to become financially independent as possible. Because if you are not financially independent, then you can't go ahead. So, education and financial independence is the most. And also if somebody if you feel that somebody is discriminating you, then speak against it because if you don't go ahead and snatch your rights, then no one will do for it, right? So
Mm,
go ahead and fight against the patriarchy, and then the world is yours.
perfect. I like that a lot.
Mm.
I want to take advantage of your Nepalese skills for a second. Can you teach us how to say I'm vegetarian or I only eat plants or I don't eat meat, however you like to phrase it
Uh,
in Nepalese?
okay, I'm translating. I am a vegetarian. Okay.
Hmm.
म शाकाहारी हूँ. म
Ooh, yeah.
शाकाहारी हूँ.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad. That's a few syllables, but if anyone wants to learn, you can just go back 15 seconds, just double check it, listen to it a few times. And that's pretty much like, because a lot of
Yeah.
your meals there are like your dal, like you said, rice dishes. So that could pretty much clean
Yeah.
you of most things.
Can you
And that's
repeat it? Can you do you
all
remember
right.
it?
Let's try. Let's try. Say it one more time.
म शाकाहारी हूँ.
More sakahari hum.
Yeah, perfect. You did it perfectly.
Perfect, perfect. It's not too hard actually. I've
Yeah.
got a few Nepalese friends, but that's actually like pretty. That's not bad. That's not bad. Um,
Mm.
Now, something I always love to do at the tail end of the episodes I have with guests is I'd like to give you the floor. If you want to share anything that you wanted to touch on, or something that you're passionate about, or something we didn't get to discuss, please let us know what wisdom you have.
Now, okay, I think to the audience, I want to say that you should learn about climate change and its various aspects, because climate change is happening right in front of us. And the countries like global south countries like Nepal is already experiencing the first hand impacts of climate change, ranging from impacts on agriculture to natural disaster, with people becoming climate refugees and all. So please keep an eye on all the information of climate change through social media, internet, and everywhere that you get. And it's not only taking the information, but please also try to look up on the solution and see what individual can change to make the planet a bit better than it is before. So please go ahead and make your lifestyle a bit environmental friendly, eco-friendly, that could be adopting more plant-based diets, that shouldn't be becoming a vegetarian or vegan, but you can cut off some of the meat diet from your diet of 1 week and something like that. So please try to be eco-friendly, and also continue on doing awareness in your family and community.
That's very well said. And I hope, someone's gotten something out of this. I think what I loved that you portrayed is the absolute importance of community, because we can't make that step to a sustainable way of life like without,
Yeah,
say, if we ditch like the biggest cause of climate change, industrialized animal agriculture, we still have a big gap in the market then with jobs
yeah,
and with
yeah,
exports, and we need to fill that gap. And the way that we fill that gap is by being connected to the community, supporting
yeah,
the people that grow their own fruits and vegetables and beans and all these things that we know or hear of, and have that connection more than the amazing food you'll be eating because it's grown with love. You'll have that
yeah,
connection with the community that you guys clearly have a lot more than a lot of other countries around. So I really think that would be such a beautiful step to take for us as
yeah.
a species.
Yeah, I advise you all to buy local as much as possible, and to become connected with the farmers around you, so that, as Tom already said, be connected with the farmers in your community and buy their products as much as possible, rather than going to supermarket and buying plastic packaged foods.
Literally the best, like so simple, but such great advice.
Mhm.
If we wanted to know more about you or connect with you, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn all over. And you can follow me on Twitter. My username is Pramisa and dash. And Tom can share it in the description
Of course,
later on.
everything will
And
be in the show notes, so you don't need to worry about the spelling or anything like that. It'll all be linked in there.
yeah, yeah, I'm in the social media: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on and having a conversation. It was absolute gem to meet you, and you are doing amazing things in your community. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of myself and the Plant Paradigm community for you doing amazing work and teaching, the next generation about what we need to do to tackle what we're going through
Yeah.
now and how to make a positive difference in our future and how we handle everything. So we really appreciate your work, and it doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Tom and the Plant Paradigm community for giving me this opportunity to share my some of the experiences and some of the ideas on food systems, climate change, and agriculture. I'm also on a learning phase. I'm not an expert, but it is my absolute pleasure to share some of the things that I have been doing and some of my beliefs and values around food systems and agriculture. Thank you so much again.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Pramisha. Hi, welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening the whole way through. Thank you once again to Pramisha for coming on and having this conversation. I think she is doing amazing things over there. And if you do want to support her, the link is in the bio to follow her and see what she's up to. As always, if this episode gave you any value, consider leaving a review on iTunes or clicking that follow button on Spotify or any other app that you listen to, so that you can get notified every time we release an episode, to make sure you're up to date with all the amazing guests that we have coming up. But that is all from me today. I will see you guys in the next episode. Stay happy, eat plants, peace.